friends. Welcome to Think Out Loud with me, a chat cast produced, hosted, and humbly offered by yours truly, Natalie Peterson, from my chilly little neck of the woods in northern Colorado to you in yours, wherever and whenever that might be. This digital adventure is an effort to turn years of internal chatter, wondering, silent suffering, and physical and mental close calls into enlightening and empowering conversations with others. Given how many choices you have about how to spend your time, I consider it an honor that you're listening in. Religion. Religion is a word that makes me squirm. And there are a host of words related to religion that cause me to become instantly resistant. Prayer, God, Bible, worship, disciple. My father was a born-again Christian and a small church minister for much of my young life. He carried his red leather-bound Bible with him often, and I have very simple, distinct memories of him sitting at the small kitchen table, penning his next sermon, jotting inspired notes on scrap paper in his very distinct handwriting, and bridging Bible stories to his current life as man of God. When my father found God, he also got sober. And for many years, he kept his addictions at bay until he didn't. And in my teenage years, as his sickness grew, his spirit waned. He kept his Bible close by, but rather than it offering connection to his higher power, it became a source to support a more disturbed line of thinking. If my mother were still with us, she would vehemently disagree that my father used religion and the Bible in manipulative ways. But from my perspective, whiskey drowned deep-seated fears and insecurities, and he crafted his own religion that had him in a seat of power. The Bible is proof that man was first, woman was less. Heaven and hell were destinations within his mind he was torn between as he tried to decipher himself from God and Satan. When he took his own life, he included verses from his little red Bible as part of his goodbye. Wow. Yeah, I have a lot to unravel in my own quest for spirituality. And it's only been in the last few years that I have begun to soften and open and become genuinely available to the possibility that I can have my own relationship with spirit, source, possibly even God. This lessening in resistance has come about as I have deliberately engaged myself in reading, conversations, and experiences with others who offer me alternate views and connections with the higher power, the greater universe, the miracle of energy and soul and divinity. I share stories of my father, not in judgment or in hatefulness, but in vulnerability, respecting and giving grace to the space from which I came as a foundation for where I might finally go with all of this, with my life, my spirituality, and my faith. Because I do believe. I believe we are glorious beings of light and love, and we are interwoven and of one miraculous space. Vibration and motion, regardless of age, sex, color. There is an energy of wholeness that we are. An energy of wholeness. This is a term I heard just this morning and I meditated on in preparing for this cast with my guest today. Living a life marinated in Eastern and Western ideologies, Reverend Dr. Ahriana Platten is an evolutionary force in spiritual transformation. She bridges ancient wisdom with contemporary teachings, empowering people to use sacred ceremony to address life challenges. As a revered mystic and visionary, Ahriana is the compass for spiritual leaders aiming to reshape the world. Her influence resonates across a global community in over 50 countries. She's an ordained unity minister, a formidable high priestess in 2 esoteric traditions, and a mentor for spiritual entrepreneurs. A former ambassador for the Parliament of the World's Religions, Ahriana is the best-selling author of Rites and Rituals, Harnessing the Power of Sacred Ceremony. And today, she's here thinking out loud with me. Hello, Ahriana, priestess, pastor, peacemaker. Welcome to my space. I'm honored to be here with you.
It is a pleasure, Natalie. Thank you so much for sharing so much about yourself. I rarely get to step into a podcast with so much kind of tasty conversation right on the edge of our tongue, right? I want to say to you, I honor the story you just shared. I honor the power of that story and the depth of detail that you gave us. There's an understanding for me that mental health is about addressing our mental health is about wholeness. We don't fuss at all about addressing our physical health. We expect to do that. We don't fuss at all about many different ways of keeping ourselves healthy, but mental health is an area that we don't touch on very often. And when we do, we touch very gingerly. And I love that you put it out there in a way that we can really talk about it.
Thank you. That means a lot to hear. And I think that really describes it is a journey. Mental health is a journey, right? And the conversations that we have with others are one thing. The conversations we have with ourselves are quite another. And to get to a point where reaching out and trying to discover, cutting through the clutter of the conversations with myself and trying to bring clarity through conversations with others has been the backbone of this chatcast of my own journeys with. We've got mutual friends in this space to just try and bring about some settling, right, of questions, of disillusionment, of stories that have just bounced off the insides of my mind for so long, that there can be strength in them and that there can be connection in them and through them. I think it helps to hear that somebody hears them, right? That used to be that they were harsh. They were my way of showing I was in control. I could talk through my story with an edge to it. And that was kind of the way that I showed it didn't bother me, that I kept everything. I could tell you the kind of the tent poles of my story, from suicide to depression and alcoholism and addiction to, you name it, fill in the blank. Being able to use words and share parts of the story was less about me being vulnerable and more about me being strong and resistant to anybody getting in. Then that's an interesting place to finally get to be able to even say that with such certainty. So,
yeah, I think we often take the tragedies of our life and turn them into identity. For some of us, we use that identity to say, I can never get over this. This is who I am because I am the victim of whatever happened to me. With other people, it's, I have survived this. You have no idea how strong I am. And neither of those polarities allow you to be in the evolution of who you are based on what's gone on. To really look, this particular subject for you seems to be inviting you into consideration around spirituality and what that is and why it might have had meaning for your dad and why it wasn't enough. And also, whether it has a place in your life or not. And that I really love that you're giving all of that consideration, and your listeners can't see you nod, but I will acknowledge that so that I'm not putting words in your mouth. But there's a question there in a lot of forms of religion and even spiritual tradition, which I see as different things. A lot of those things don't necessarily leave much room for question. They're delivered in factual ways. This is what you're supposed to believe if you're on the right path, and this is how it plays out in your life. And one of the things that's really important to me about all of that is the freedom to evolve. You said something about your dad creating his own faith. I think we all do. I absolutely believe we all create our own faith, our own spiritual path, whether it's related to a God or not.
Tell us about your own upbringing. I'm particularly interested in your own discovery of your spirituality.
So, as the earliest memories I have of prayer, and I grew up Catholic, the earliest memories that I have of prayer were that I would ask a question and I would get an answer. I heard a voice in my head that, and in my head, I say that, but I really think it's more of a feeling in my heart. There was a response to me when I talked to God. There was a response that was a knowing. And I have the best words I have ever found to describe is that communication comes in the sense of when you think about how a prism breaks up light, I get a multi-layered voice, if you want to call it that, that seems to have a multitude of layers. It's one voice, but it's something so much more than one voice that it's a little difficult for me to find words. I'm 63 now. I've been hearing that voice my whole life.
Wow.
So I grew up Catholic. In the Catholic Church, when you walk in the church, there's the massive crucifix always that hangs in the front of the church that is symbolic of the passion of Christ, the death of Christ, and that whole experience, the whole Jesus story. And so at a particular point, my dad was in the military. We traveled all over. At a particular point in traveling from one town to another, we lived in a house that was across the street from the Catholic Church and catty corner to the convent on one side and the monastery on the other. So I was the fourth corner of Catholic corner.
Wow.
And so very involved, went to the Catholic school, was not unusual to have people from either the convent or the monastery visit. They were close to my family. We knew them well. And at one point I had the chance to talk to the priest at our church about the fact that my younger brothers were able to be altar boys and that I felt very called to do that service. I was probably 11 or 12 at the time. And he asked me to walk across the street with him to the church. I did. We went up the giant stairs because it was one of those very high stairwells, walked up the stairs, opened the big wooden doors, and I ran down the aisle, which was just this beautiful, rich red carpet, all the way down just to the platform, to the altar platform. And he hollered at me from the back of the church, "Stop." And I was probably 3 feet from the platform when he hollered, and he walked down. And as I turned and watched him, I could see this angry look on his face. And he got to the edge of the altar platform and took me by the shoulders and turned me fully square to look straight into his eyes. And he gave me a very long lecture about the fall of Eve and all the reasons why women are not allowed to step up on that platform in service. And that I was never to go up there unless he called me up there. I was there to clean or I was getting married. Otherwise, that was not a place for me. And I got very tearful because I mentioned to you that giant cross that happened at the base of that giant cross, which was for me the symbol of my Savior, this is my Jesus. And the fact that the voice of that priest spoke to me there was not so much a rejection from him, it was a rejection from what I understood as the sacred. And so I ran out of the church in tears. I went home. I told my mom I wasn't Catholic anymore. And my mom said, in a very kind way, "You're going to be Catholic as long as you live in my house, and whatever you decide to do when you get to be an adult is up to you. But our family is Catholic. Our family will be Catholic as long as you live here." So I continued to celebrate in the Catholic ceremonies until I moved out. And then I got involved with an organization called the Way International, which I don't believe is in existence anymore, but it was an evangelical Christian college campus ministry that did a lot of witnessing. And I got involved there thinking I was in a different environment because there were a lot of women engaged in the witnessing process. And it was about 6 months in that I was reprimanded and told I needed to pull back because women were not leaders in this community. Women did not belong leading in this faith. It was not in accordance with the Bible. And at that point, I stepped out entirely from biblical teachings and Christianity, and spent a little bit of time just kind of studying on my own. I was kind of fascinated with the occult when I was little. Anyway, I would sneak away from my house and go to the library and read books in the library that I could never bring into my home, just to learn about things. So the stories about the myths of Avalon and all of that were fascinating to me, and I wasn't allowed to read those. So I left Christianity and began studying pre-Christian European traditions because I knew there had to be something before Christianity. Christianity is a little more than 2,000 years old. There has to be something before that. And I spent time studying esoteric traditions, studying paganism, studying what really results in ends up being indigenous tribal culture, because those pagan cultures are that. They're indigenous tribal culture, and indigenous just meaning of the land wherever you are. So whether you're of the land in England or Ireland or here where we think of our Native American or indigenous American cultures, or it's indigenous shamanism from Mongolia, all of these indigenous tribal cultures come from the earth. They come from observation and living in union with the earth. And I spent 30 years of my life traveling around the world, interacting with amazing indigenous cultural leaders and learning how to put my feet on the earth and be at one with the earth rather than walking on it or needing to be a steward of it. And so about 15 years ago, I got involved with Unity Church. I was asked to come in and speak about paganism. That's how I got there. And Unity Church is an American-based church that was founded by a couple and founded around healing and founded very much in the roots of what they called metaphysical or practical Christianity. And that Christianity coming out of the understanding that the teachings of Jesus, the way Jesus lived is a way for us to live. So Unity positions Jesus as a way shower, not as the only Son of God, but as a way shower who lived in oneness with the divine. And Unity invites us to live in oneness, to understand that there is nothing about Jesus that we don't all have in us. It's who we are if we could actually understand that there is a oneness with what we call God, that there's not a God outside of us. And that lines up very well with a lot of indigenous teachings. So in many ways, Unity gave me Jesus back. It was a coming full circle. And coming into Unity, I didn't have to give up anything that I had learned along the way. I have been able to continue to be both priestess and pastor and lead a spiritual congregation and do all of that work and bring everything I am to one place. So it's a little bit of a long journey, but it's all of that is important to understanding how I teach and what I teach and who I am in the world.
Wow. I'm just fascinated with the journey and with the, if I can't help but compare it to my own wandering, what felt like aimlessly. to have such a drive, a hunger for to spend 30 years engaging with such it had to have been an open heart, an open mind, an open spirit to take the lessons and the guidance and the knowledge and the traditions and to wrap them into who you are today is just beautiful. I read in one of your blogs about the concept of cherry picking our spiritual values. And like you were saying, just as we were opening around, we all develop our own faith, right? We all develop our own religion. And that to me sounds, it sounds so counter to what I was what you describe as your Catholic up, it's this way. It's rules, it's hard edges, it's scoldings for going out coloring outside the lines. And at very young ages, to have desires. I relate to you and having this desire of wanting to be outside those lines and be included, and in such a vulnerable state of mind be told that that's not possible. And so having that rejection turn into a hardness or a drive, like it shuts you down or it lights you up, right? There's something about that I think just in your story I relate to particularly, and I'm fascinated with the walk that you've been on. Just incredible.
It feels guided. Like I said, I've known that there is something more than me my whole life because it's always responded to me. And so over the years, when you're a child, people position that as imagination. Oh, that's your imagination.
Mm.
As you get older, people question whether you're sane. How do you know that that's God? Well, I don't even know if I call it God. What I know is this body that my soul inhabits is a gift that allows me to have perception of life. And it has very distinct reactions when something feels right for me and something feels wrong. And when I follow what is right, what feels right in the inside of who I am, when I follow that, my life plays out well.
Mm-hmm.
When I don't follow it, I find myself saying, geez, I knew I shouldn't have done that.
Mm-hmm.
So I call it intuition, call it inner guidance, call it divine guidance, call it whatever you want. This experience for me about studying with and learning from and processing the ideas of faith and what some people call intimacy and ultimacy, the intimate relationship that we have with life as human beings, and the ultimate relationship that is, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? Where am I going when I leave this body, right? So my whole life has been that. And I am of the belief that that's what I came to do.
Mm.
And as much as that experience at the end of that red carpet underneath that giant crucifix was devastating for me, it was the exact right thing to put me on a path that in my mind, we started talking about wholeness, that in my mind brings me a sense of spiritual wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who think that if you are cherry picking your beliefs, that's heretical action, that you're a heretic. Okay, there are a lot of really amazing souls that have crossed through this life that have been labeled heretic that I would stand beside in a heartbeat. I know what is true for me. I know how my guidance works. And I feel incredibly, incredibly blessed to have had the opportunity to sit at the feet of so many wise, amazing teachers and learn.
Is there an experience that you could share in your travels that kind of rises up to the top, sitting at the feet of a mentor, of a guide, of a teacher, that was particularly that shifted something formidable in you? Is there anything that bubbles up?
So let me say that I believe as a teacher that when we open our mouths and we speak, and our heart is open to do what is ours to do, that what comes through is always the divine.
Hmm.
And so, more than individual faces, it's the appearance of the divine in the most amazing ways that rocks my world. I will share with you one of the most moving and life-changing experiences I ever had. I had the opportunity to visit a 4,000-year-old Buddhist temple in Daegu, South Korea. And uh, we have thresholds here in America, and there are little metal strips that run along the floor and, like hold the carpet down on one side and whatever the flooring is on the other side. So when we think of a threshold, we think of it as just kind of a smooth space that you cross. But in Asia and around the world, India, many of the thresholds on ancient buildings are about 8 to 12 inches high, and it's a like probably a 2 by 2 piece of wood. And so you have to step over. If you step in to go to this particular temple, you don't just step across the threshold. You have to lift your foot up off the floor and step into this room. So when I went to this temple, I was standing on the outside and I was looking in, and you can see the beautiful Buddha up on the altar. This is a 4,000-year-old structure, all wood, beautiful, amazing place. And there was a female monk standing on the outside, and she asked me in very broken English if I was there for something special. And I explained to her that I had just heard about a friend who had been diagnosed with cancer, and I wanted to pray for her. And so she walked me through the process of how I could go to the front and get incense and light it, and then sit in the room and pray. And I thanked her. She was lovely. I could picture her soft, just the soft perspective that she had. And I stepped one foot over the threshold and had the other foot in the air. When I was pulled to my knees, I hit the floor with both knees in spontaneous, just tears flowing down my face.
Mm.
And it couldn't have been 2 seconds. I stepped over, I hit the floor. I was sobbing because my whole being was taken into the sacredness of that place. And it took me what felt like hours and was probably minutes to even figure out what just happened and what to do with myself. And I kind of crawled out of the doorway to a place where I could sit and just let the tears flow. And as I sat there, the what I felt was ancestral energy in the walls. What I felt was 4,000 years of praying. That space had held 4,000 years of prayer and communion with the divine and commitment and dedication and care by the monks for whom it is their sacred work, their seva in the world, to care for that space. And the overwhelming feeling of that was more than this body could hold. It had to flow out.
Mm-hmm.
It was more energy than this body could take. So I sat there until the tears stopped. And then I got up and I went and lit incense. And I knew it was time to leave. I knew I needed to go. And so you go out a side door. You come in one door and go out a side door. And when you go out the side door, there's a little tea room there. And that same monk was on the other side of the door. And she watched me. She saw what happened. And she took my hands and said, "Have tea with me."
Mm.
And she took me over and sat me at a table and fixed tea in silence, prepared tea for me in silence. And I just sat there, just letting things flow through. And she took out a little piece of rice paper and she started doing calligraphy on the rice paper as I drank my tea. And when I was ready to go, when she could tell that I was done with my tea, she said, "I will pray for your friend for 1,000 days." Which, first of all, was just like 1,000 in my mind. I immediately thought, that's 3 years. You will pray for me. Have I ever offered someone that I would pray for them every day for a year, for a week, for a month, much less to say something to me that I knew was absolutely true? I absolutely 100% knew she would pray for my friend for 1,000 days. So it was so overwhelming. And then I stood up, hugged her and thanked her. And she had slid this little paper in a little thin envelope, and she handed it to me. And I placed it in my purse very carefully, and I left. And I didn't take it out again until I was on the plane on the way home. And I opened it up on the way home and opened it up and looked at it. And there was the calligraphy. And then in English, underneath, she had written "flow like water." And so that message, that "flow like water" message, for me is a call back to the tears that happen when we completely immerse ourselves in both spirit and the ancestral history, the ancient energy that builds from all of us, that is part of the oneness we are, and is also a call to the strength of water, which will flow through anything, flow in and around, can move around all obstacles, can break down the walls to create the Grand Canyon, and can also be as soft and gentle as the tears that fall from our face. So it reminds me that that too is the energy of the holy, that it is this massive, massive power that can break down walls where we don't believe that's possible, and at the same time can be the very gentle connection to love that opens our heart and makes us feel safe.
You're a storyteller that just it's absolutely melodic listening to your voice and being taken to this beautiful place. What a wonderful experience, and life-changing and out of body, and to be able to carry forth the lessons of it. I am just tickled. It's not often that I don't have words to come out of my mouth, but I could sit and listen to you all day. And I know I'm not the first person that has told you that. Your voice and the way that you share what you've learned, and what you've experienced is just, it's mind-boggling. I especially love this concept of threshold and the stepping into, there's a release that happens at that midpoint, right, where it's a tipping, if you will. It quite literally took your legs out from underneath you.
And so often in life, we cross thresholds. We know that something has changed for us. Sometimes our ceremonies are designed, ceremonies in general will create a threshold. This is who you were before you get married, and now you're going to walk through the ceremony, the thresholding of that, and into the new ceremony, or to separate out from someone, or to become a parent, or to create a new job. Whatever it is, we cross thresholds with so little attention to the change that is really palpable if we allow the time to recognize it. And I often tell people, when you walk into a new room, you cross the threshold and you reach to one side or the other and you flip the light switch and you look around and you figure out where you are. What's in the room with me? Where can I sit? Is there a window to open? Are there blinds to open? Is there someone else in the room with me? Whatever it is. In life, we have a tendency to walk through rooms of our life rather than stopping at the threshold and noticing what is here for me right now. So there is I'm sorry that I can't quote the person. There's a mental health quote that I come across often that says, true mental health is the ability to live in the present moment rather than the past or the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we cross, which I appreciate the sentiment there. I know there's a lot more, and I would never simplify mental health to just that. But there is a lot more to that statement than the top level words. We worry too much about the past. We plan too much for the future, and we miss our life. We have a sense that we are missing our life because we didn't stop in as we crossed whatever new threshold that happens to be, to actually take in what is available to us, to be present and feel into this new space and what it offers us. And so thresholds are really important. And there are all kinds of them. They're a tremendously important part of our life. And that thresholding experience certainly did point that out to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've never quite thought about, or this is the first time that it's gelling for me, the connection. It's obvious as I'm saying it, but I've never quite intertwined them like I'm about to. And that is the way that you're describing mental health and spirituality in the same, right? So closely intertwined. And it's new to me to think about. I've had a very distinct understanding of mental health, but I've kept it separate from what it means to have a connection with one's higher power or source, which, as I'm saying out loud, doesn't make sense that I would keep them separate. Maybe that's just in my own conditioning, because it's like you speak, as I was doing research over the last couple of days, there's science and spirit, and kind of this the intertwining of the two, and maybe that's where my conditioning is, that mental health is a clinical, feels clinical as opposed to spiritual, but in fact there is mental health to be discovered and gained and embraced in a spiritual path. Again, so I'm saying it and it feels so obvious, but it feels so new, as kind of an aha that I'm having here with you.
So one of the things that I'd offer you to consider is that we use the words mental health to describe mental illness. We really, when we're talking about mental health, are generally talking about an imbalance, an inability to cope, an inability to correct, to balance, to come to wholeness. So our mental health conversations are about illness, and we kind of do this. I'll correlate this to pregnancy. When we go into the medical arena, pregnancy is seen as as a physical condition, a health concern. It is the most natural thing a woman's body can do. It is the thing our body is built to do. We're not brought very often into conversation about the fact that our body has wisdom that it can apply. In the same way, our mental construct is a subtle body, in the same way that our physical and spiritual bodies are subtle bodies. They all work together. Our physical body responds to our spiritual and our mental well-being, and vice versa. Our mental health can be thrown out because our physical body is out, or our spiritual being is out of balance. And I'm not talking about religions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about our openness to our own intuition, to the level of us that is energetic, that is frequency, that is vibration, that is as real a body as our physical body or our mental state.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look historically, When someone was out of balance in the tribes, they went not to a scientist, they went to the medicine man or the wise woman, and they were brought back into ceremony. They were made to belong first. They were reminded that they belonged both to the tribe, to their community, to the tribe, and to the world, that they were one with the world. And whatever was going on with them was reflected in the tribe, was reflected in the whole community, and cared for and seen as something greater. So we have a hard time in modern life looking at our problems and saying, what is out of balance with us as the greater tribe of humanity? That we have so much individual struggle. What can we do as the greater tribe to bring the world that we share back into balance so that our people can come back into balance? Instead, we ostracize and separate out and create mental health as an outside problem I am not related to. Your addiction is not related to me. Your inability, your anxiety, your stress, your whatever it is not related to me, when indeed it is in a massive way related to the world that we're co-creating. And this is one of the reasons that sharing the tribal teachings, and I say tribal very loosely because on one hand, I have no Native American blood. And so it's very important to appreciate cultures and where we are. And on the other hand, I have as much indigenous blood as everybody else. We all came from a place on this planet. We are indigenous to this planet. And our ability to grasp what our ancestors knew, what science has in many ways pushed away as not valuable and not valid, and to reweave these things is, in my mind, core to our healing as a society.
You have a very specific calling to teach and empower others to walk their journey, and to not do it alone, and to, in fact, in finding one's own path to help others do the same. I want to give some airtime to your upcoming interfaith mystery school that is starting, where all of these, I feel like I'm having visions of I wish you could do it in person. I'd be sitting front row like I was when I was little. I was always a front row to this program that you are launching just in the next week or so. Can you tell us more about your Soulful's Interfaith Mystery School and what's in store for people?
I can. So, first of all, historically, a mystery school is a place that has responsibility for holding ancient teachings and keeping them intact. The ancient mysteries are kept there by teachers who are committed, by people who were students and became teachers and were entrusted with the deep teachings that allow us to connect energetically, that allow us to connect physically, that allow us to connect with the earth and also with the universe, with this whole structure that is life. So this interfaith mystery school invites its students to look cross-culturally at universal teachings that you can find across many faiths and many spiritual paths. Because if something is true in many places, it probably matters to us. And some of them are really simple. They're things that we know, like it's important that we honor our parents. No matter whether they were good parents or bad parents, they taught us something. It's important for us to spend a period of our life looking at that and analyzing who we are in relationship to who they were and what they demonstrated and taught for us. You see this across all faiths. So you can trust, when we talk about cherry picking where you're going to spend your time studying, you can cherry pick by looking across faiths and going, this there's universal consciousness across space here. It's probably important that I spend some time healing what might be broken as a result of my upbringing, and also being in gratitude for the things that I learned. The mysteries that come out of that are a deeper, richer teaching that have to do with an archetype, a parental archetype that we all live in some way on the planet. So Mystery School invites you to look cross-culturally. It invites you to look at things like why some religions are founded in joy and other religions are founded in suffering, how that happened so that you can understand the teachings. And it also gives you a ceremonial foundation to look at the things that we live with, at how the seasons and cycles of life correlate with the seasons and cycles of us, as human beings, and how we can use the tools that we're surrounded by in both nature and science, specifically more in the field of quantum science or metaphysical science, to live through life, find whether or not we have, there's this great search that we're here to find a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You're here to be is what you're here to do. You're here to be in the moment, to allow yourself to both receive in as we breathe in, and to breathe out also your unique wisdom out into the world. So all of these practices in this program are designed to help you breathe in wisdom, and equally to have you breathe out your unique wisdom into the world, to do what you came to do and give the gifts that only you can give. So this is a 52-week program. It will go up on my website this week. I think it will be up tomorrow. I will teach the first round live. I will record it at the same time. So people will have the opportunity to either learn from me in this first year directly, or to take the classes as recordings, and they can do both. In this first round, you'll be able to do both. After that, it will be a pre-recorded program that's available. The first teaching of the month is all teaching, and then there are a couple of gatherings that happen during the month that allow students to come back and say, can we talk more about? Can you tell me more about this? Can we go deeper in this subject? I would like to better understand, or I have these questions about what you said. So whenever you're in the program, you have personal interaction with me. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of whether the original class will be done live or not.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, without hesitation, you are a joy, an absolute joy to be around, and I can imagine to learn from is other level, and to share space with, and to hear more of your stories. I want to be sure that anyone listening, that they don't hesitate to connect with you if they're called. And so I want to give a shout out to asoulfulworld.com is your website. And that's a soulful, and full is key here because it's spelled full, FULL, world.com, asoulfulworld.com. If you search Ahriana Platten on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and that's Ahriana with an H, Ahriana, you'll find you and all of the magic that you offer. Are there any last words that you want to leave us with before I take us out and say thank you for thinking out loud with me today?
I think the gift of today for me, Natalie, is the reminder that wholeness is our objective, and wholeness brings all of what seem to be separated parts of ourself together. It's a woven tapestry. So often we hear that metaphor that, we are a tapestry of many things. When we begin to pursue our life looking for wholeness, it invites us to embrace what we perceive as good and holy about ourselves, and also what we perceive as broken and not as good about ourselves. And sometimes the greatest gifts are in that second side. Sometimes the deepest learnings are in that second side. So I leave you with your own contemplation of wholeness and what it means to you, and the concept that there's a concept in the Hindu faith, a Sanskrit word called Maitri. It sounds just like my tree in the front yard, my tree.
Mm.
And Maitri means loving kindness to the self.
Mm.
And wholeness is based in that, in loving kindness, loving acceptance, loving compassion for all of the aspects of who we are. So I would invite your listeners to live from that wholeness.
Mm. I love that. Thank you all for tuning in and thinking out loud with me and today's guest, Reverend Dr. Ahriana Platten. It has filled my soul genuinely to share this space with you, Ahriana. Thank you. And thank you, listeners. Please continue to tune in. Keep an eye out for when. And until then, take care of you. Big hugs, big love. Be kind. Bye, friends.